I have the easy part. I'm the moderator tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we hope to go tonight and offer a few sort of stage-setting observations about the clean tech arena. But I'm going to be fairly brief because the guys we really want to hear from are Noel and Pradeep. So the sort of format for tonight is I'll have some initial remarks, and then Noel and Pradeep will each have a chance to tell you about how they see the world and what they do within their institutions. Mary's characterization of these two guys in their institutions is very apt. They really sort of, span the entire reach from the very large-scale sort of academic and research-oriented institutions to very large companies, and all the way down to helping incubate young companies in the clean tech space. So their vision on this space is much more panoramic than most of ours. So after they each have a chance to say what they want to say, we really just hope to generate lots of discussion with all of you and find out what's on your minds. We have some themes in mind that we hope we'll be able to sort of focus on a bit during the discussion. We hope to really generate some sense from everyone in the room of what startups, clean tech startups, really need to get to escape velocity, to spread their wings, and really take off. We want to basically catalog, to some extent, the big resources that presently exist to help young companies. We also want to identify resource gaps, and then brainstorm a bit to the extent we can in our discussion about, what's missing? What is it that these bigger institutions and companies could be doing to help the clean tech innovation community? So to set the stage for our discussion, I'd just like to take a few minutes to talk about the world as I see it from the perspective of young clean tech companies. And the first thing I would say is you have to pause when we use this word clean tech, because it's an incredibly broad domain. I think it's much broader than tech or IT. It's much broader than biotech, in my opinion. We're really talking about a broad array of things that encompasses everything from very diverse types of renewable energy technologies, wind, solar, hydropower, nuclear, and so forth, each one being itself a broad domain, to energy storage, a broad array of energy efficiency solutions, transportation innovations, and beyond. So this word clean tech is an umbrella term that we all sort of use as if we know what it means. And the truth is it means a lot of things. From there, it really is quite hard to generalize about what clean tech startups need to reach escape velocity. But I think it's fair to say, as a general matter, that many of these companies, particularly ones that are focused on new renewable energy production technologies, tend to be doing really hard things that are often capital intensive and that have a very long incubation cycle, both from a research and development perspective and from a commercialization perspective, because so often they're trying to sell into and sell us out of sort of habits and demand patterns and whatnot that are hard to change. And Noel's organization and Pradeep's organization are doing a great deal to help these companies shorten their R&D horizons, their commercialization horizons. And it's the potential to do that for startups that we really want to focus on tonight. So why do clean tech startups need help? I think there's some trends that we can sort of look at and some data that we can look at that helps answer this question. And I'd start just with some observations about the private funding environment for clean tech, early stage clean tech companies. When you look at the venture capital, the world of venture capital investment generally, we know that 2007 and 2008 were peak years for venture investment. 2009 was a real slump year. We did see investment levels pick back up in 2010, but at $22 billion of US VC investment across all sectors, IT, biotech, and so forth, we're still down 26% from the peak in 2007. And so far in 2011, from the data I've seen, we're not on track to beat 2010's performance. But in the clean tech sector, things look a little different, actually. And on first blush, it looks like quite a rosy picture. Unlike VC generally, 2010 was really a banner year for clean tech investment. There was $7.8 billion of clean tech venture capital investment worldwide last year, according to the Clean Tech Group, with 70% of that investment occurring in North America. Investment levels dipped in the second half of 2010 sharply, which caused a great deal of anxiety at the time. The thought was that 2011 would be a really potentially down year for it. But in 2011, so far, the results are actually pretty strong. $6.8 billion, according to the Clean Tech Group, has been invested worldwide in clean tech early stage companies so far in 2011. And we're even seeing some liquidity in the market. There, in the second quarter of this year, for instance, there were 11 IPOs in the space and 86 M&A transactions, totaling about $15 billion of liquidity events. So that's the sort of world of private funding. We all know that there's been a lot of public funding, really unprecedented levels of public funding for clean tech technologies, companies, projects, and so forth in recent years, grants for research, loan guarantees, we'll talk more about that in a minute, subsidies of various kinds, and so forth. So with all this recent funding activity, one might think it's smooth sailing for early stage companies. But there's a reason to believe, I think, that the picture may not be quite that rosy. On the venture capital front, there in the third quarter of this year, the quarter recently ended, the level of venture capital investment had dipped 11% compared to Q2. One quarter delta doesn't make a downward trend, but are we witnessing a decline? Whether or not venture capital investment in clean tech is trending up or down, however, again, we have to peel back the layers of the onion. That broad term clean tech is getting broader. And so anecdotally, and the New York Times actually had an article about this last week. It's something I've witnessed in my practice among my early stage clean tech clients and the venture capitalists I work with. This term clean tech continues to broaden, and many investors now are very weary of the very capital-intensive investments that we saw being made 5 or 6 years ago. I know many venture capitalists who made a biofuels investment or whatever, thought they were making a technology-oriented investment, and they in fact were, but they found that they had to build a refinery to validate the company's technology and prove that it could be produced at commercial scale, and they didn't realize they were signing up for that. Many VCs had to learn the world of project finance over the last 5 or 6 years and really begin to partner with those sorts of players. So many of them now, I see, are turning to what you might call more capital light sort of investments. investments in efficiency technologies, various types of business model innovations. The car sharing company Relay Rides raised a big round recently and has been getting a lot of attention. There have been investments in companies that have insurance products related to the clean tech space. So this term is broadening. The recent failure of Solyndra and Beacon Power has, these events obviously have really put the loan guarantee program under the spotlight. It remains to be seen what implications that'll have for public funding in the space. There's no doubt that these more capital light areas of investment, efficiency technologies and so forth, deserve our attention, deserve our capital. And yet I think it's also fair to say we all know that without new technologies being developed on the energy production side, we're not going to solve the problems we need to solve. There has been too much neglect, in my view, of efficiency opportunities, but I think the analysis shows that we're not going to make all the progress we need unless we can make some big changes on the supply side. I see firsthand from small companies how difficult it is to incubate these technologies, to incubate the companies. Operating cash is certainly one of their needs, but they have many, many needs beyond that. Technical expertise, management talent, independent third-party validation of their technologies, channel partners, project finance. The list goes on and on and on. And I think I'll just leave it there because I think that is the place to segue to Pradeep and Noel to let them share with you all the answers to the question of how we help these startups. So Pradeep, you're going to go first? Yeah?
First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me here to be at this forum. It is indeed a pleasure for me to attend this, this gracious occasion here and talk a little bit about what we're trying to do in the nano as well as the clean tech space. Before I get into some of the discussions here, maybe I should ask a couple of quick questions just to sort of gauge the audience here to some extent. How many of you here are VCs or investment bankers? Okay, there's a few of them. How many are from startup companies that are interested in the clean tech space? There's quite a few of those. Okay. And technologists, people that understand technology quite well? Okay, there's quite a few of those too. So that sort of gives me a good sense of the audience here. Thank you. I represent the College of Nanoscale Science and Engineering, and I'll talk a little bit about the Nano College to some of you that may or may not even know about what we're doing up in upstate there, a few hours from here. First of all, we have been in existence. We're a fairly new college, as Mary indicated to you before. The actual college was established in 2004, about 6 or 7 years ago. And today it's become a powerhouse from a technology development perspective. We consider ourselves the technology hub located in Albany. And one of our visions is to really create the technology development programs, the R&D, that bridges the gap between R&D and manufacturing. So if you look at on the bottom right-hand side of the chart, we see IBM East Fishkill. They were one of our original partners in this endeavor. Up north, the top right-hand side picture is Global Foundries. That's a spin-off from AMD, and they're setting up, if you don't know already, one of the largest next-generation chip manufacturing facilities in upstate New York. We also have initiatives in photonics in Rochester. We are tied in with Lockheed Martin at the Electronics Park in Syracuse. And with Utica, there's a Nano Center campus that's established there. This whole region, on this, not just the state, as I said, has become a global powerhouse. The nanotech hub that we're talking about, there isn't anything like that anywhere else in the world. And I'm not trying to be cocky or arrogant here, but I mean, what I'd like you to do is, if you haven't been to the place, I would absolutely invite you to come and take a look at it. Kicking the tires and seeing what has been created in such a short time period is really, it's really amazing. And I presume that's why I was invited here to talk about what we're doing up there. the infrastructure itself, just to put things in perspective, about in 2001, there was an investment of roughly about $150 million that created the center. And there was some seed money that came from New York State. Today, there's been close to $7 billion in investments that are gone in here. Most of it, 90% of it, is private investment today. We have close to 800,000 square feet of cutting-edge facilities. Again, as I said, it's unparalleled in any academic institution in the world. You might find that kind of a facility maybe in a private company or something like that, but not in an academic or a university type setting. We work with close to 250 different companies on a regular basis. All of the top-notch technology-related companies that you can think of. I've listed a few of them here, the Sematech, IBM, AMD, Micron, Infineon. These are large, I'm talking about tens of billions of dollars in size companies that are actually located within our facility. And when I started there about 2000, 2001, we were about 40 or 50 of us that had this dream and this vision of creating a technology hub. And on site today, we have close to about 2,800 people, and it's growing rapidly. Just a few weeks ago, Governor Andrew Cuomo announced an expansion of this entire facility. There's another $4.8 billion of new investment that's going into the facility over the next 3 to 5 years. And very little of that is actually coming from the state. $400 million is the seed investment, again, that New York State is putting on there. And the rest of it is coming from private investment. So the economic development impact is pretty substantial in terms of what we've created in Albany. The college itself, I mean, it is an academic institution, and the way we've structured it, we consider ourselves sort of the Switzerland of the technology world, where companies can come in and share in technology and IP and knowledge without compromising their own background technology. So that's the firewalls that we've created and the structure that we've created to make this a very effective organization for ourselves and to attract and become a magnet for what we're trying to do here. So the college, as I was saying before, there are 4 different, what we call constellations. We are trying to break down silos. Typically, mechanical engineers don't talk to electrical engineers, or they don't talk to physicists or to chemical engineers. That's obviously a problem. So what we've tried to do is break down some of those silos. And the 4 constellations that we've created include, for example, the business side or nanoeconomics as well. We call it nanoeconomics, as well as the sciences and engineering and the biosciences. So we have the faculty. We have close to about 60 faculty members right now with about 200, 250 students. There's mostly graduate students. We do have an undergraduate program that we started as well. We look at actually applying nanotechnology to a variety of different sectors. Semiconductor is the big sector that I talked about that we've invested in. And we focus in on the industry sectors that need a substantial amount of infrastructure in terms of investment, because startup companies, even large companies, you'll be surprised, can't afford to invest a lot of their own money in setting up this large infrastructure. So they're always looking for shared resources, and that's what we actually provide. Semiconductor is one, energy and environmental technologies is the other one. We also focus in on, for example, nanobioscience, and the third area is transportation and defense-related applications. We're creating the infrastructure for everybody to work on. So I'll talk briefly about the Energy and Environmental Technology Center. We've been doing this for about 12 years now, not just because it's become a hot topic for all of us. And we're basically, it's the same model for trying to create jobs. So on the energy side, I look at it as the 3 E's that we tend to focus in on. It's the energy, the environment, and economic development. Being a state institution, the state of New York, our emphasis is in a large part focused on economic initiatives and growth of the state, both upstate and downstate. So here's how we actually, from a portfolio perspective, our expertise is definitely in the nanotechnology side, but we play in a variety of other avenues by actually partnering with others. We don't have to do it all ourselves, of course. So, we take into account the IT resources that exist at other places, or maybe life science type technology capabilities that exist at other places, And we bring that to bear, and then we can focus in on specific industrial products or technologies that make sense. And some of them are actually identified here. I won't go into too much detail of all of these. So if you look at it from the perspective of how nanotechnology makes an impact in each of these energy sectors, we put them in 3 specific categories. Jeff already talked about energy efficiency being sort of the low-hanging fruit. It's industry-driven already. It's short-term. People can go in and start to sell product and make an ROI based on the investments that they put in. Everything from green buildings to monitoring and control systems, power electronics, et cetera. Advanced solar, I put that in the disruptive tech arena, and I consider that to be at the tipping point, at least here in the US. Worldwide, solar has grown tremendously. I mean, it's a $100 billion industry today. It's been growing at 25 to 30% clip on an annual basis for the last 10 years. It still requires a substantial amount of investment. It requires bankability, as some people know about it in the industry. It requires financing. It requires a tremendous amount of resources to actually get it over the curve, and I'll talk briefly about that in a second. And then there's the energy storage sector, which is a longer-term play. It's still very expensive from the standpoint of implementing it, for example, at a utility scale or even in the transportation area. It still requires a substantial amount of work, but those are the kind of technical areas that we tend to focus in on. Mary mentioned the U.S. Photovoltaic Manufacturing Consortium. So when the U.S. Department of Energy and the federal government looks at, we're giving money to all of these companies, and some of them are going under, and there's nothing really coming out of it in a short time period. What do we do to really, and then they're looking at actually scrambling to figure out what needs to happen. As I mentioned, solar is the fastest growing industry. $100 billion today is nothing to sniff at, and we tend to be in the U.S. We're losing out to other countries from the standpoint of the jobs, the economic development opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So we've created what we call the Photovoltaic Manufacturing Consortium. This is not different from the Semitech that was actually created in the 80s, that some of you may remember. Semitech was created to fight against the competition that was coming from Japan when they were dumping, in other words, memory chips into the U.S. market. And so Semitech, essentially in a couple of years, turned around the semiconductor industry by focusing their efforts onto innovation, next generation technology developments, and has brought back what we call the nanotechnology or the semiconductor-related industry that I showed you earlier in terms of what's happened. And it took a long time to really establish and get a strong foothold in that industry. We look at the same thing happening in the photovoltaics industry. There's over $300 million of investment that's going into this. We are creating, again, a resource, an infrastructure that everybody from a startup company to a medium-sized company or even a large company can go in and use the manufacturing facility. So this has just started. I mean, just 2 months ago, the program was established and the agreements were signed with the Department of Energy. Another thing that we're very deeply involved with is the incubation activities. We have a state-funded incubator. There's several of them across the state. And we have partnerships with NYCERDA, which is the Energy Research and Development Authority of the state. And you can see the map there on the right-hand side. I mean, we cover the entire Tech Valley region. We're looking at startups that fall into our niche. So, I mean, if we have a specific technology capability that we can provide, we can help move that along. Our incubation concepts are very, very different from the original incubation concepts where a company was given cheap space and said, okay, we'll allow you to sit over here and do things. I mean, we have some key capabilities from an infrastructure perspective that companies can live with and help with. So there are the usual business assistance, technical assistance, and education and outreach type capabilities that we also have. I do have Nick Quirkus here. Nick, you want to raise your hand? He actually runs our incubator up in Albany. So if you have our startup company and interested in talking to us, we'd be very happy to mention that with you. I was involved with starting what we call the National Clean Energy Alliance, which was a partnership with the Department of Energy and the National Renewable Energy Lab. And this is back in 2000 when we were approached by a lot of small companies and that said, how do we actually start to find both investments, venture capital investments or private investments, or technology in terms of market value, and our customers. I mean, how do we actually identify them? How do we bring them together? So the program was funded about 10 years ago for the tune of about $2.5 million. Today there are about 23 different incubators across the entire country that are part of that. There's about 150 companies that have gone through the program. 250 technologies have been commercialized, and you can see the kind of money that has been generated from this program. And we're still actively involved with this program that's now a standalone program separate from the Department of Energy. A couple of things I want to point out to you in terms of the clean tech opportunity really quickly. There are tons of ideas. Question is, how do you actually know that these ideas are good ideas? Some of them are hyped quite a bit, especially in the clean tech space. The point I would try to make is, I'm sure we'll get into the discussions on this, is the clean tech space is not necessarily the best space for venture capital investments. I think Jeff alluded to that to some extent up front. And the point I want to make is the reason that is the case is it requires a tremendous amount of investment. It's not just providing some initial A round, B round, C round type investments. This requires hundreds of millions of dollars to invest. I mean, I'm talking about the large clean tech type, not the new clean tech type projects that Jeff was talking about, but if you really want to get into the clean tech space, it requires hundreds of millions to build the first pilot facility. Question is, where do you raise that money from? Venture capitalists are not in the business of putting in money for tens of years so that you actually go through the entire process of proof of feasibility, the product demonstration, et cetera. And lastly, all the clean tech investments or the products that are being developed, almost 90% of them require some form of government regulation or policy that you need to overcome. Because clean tech, as is with energy, is, in my view, it's something that the government typically invests in. It's for the public good. It's the same reason why you don't have a lot of private companies running in and building highways, for example, unless, of course, you can charge toll on those highways, a substantial amount of toll, so that you can recover your investments. It's the same thing with the energy space, that the government has to invest, whether it's the federal government or the state government or a municipality that has to put in for their own power generation facility, et cetera, et cetera. So you get my point. Again, I sort of talked about this earlier. There are two steps to failure, or pitfalls, as I call it, in the clean tech space. There's the valley of death. All of us know about the valley of death. What I was talking about earlier was the mountain of debt, which is another barrier you really need to overcome as well. And this is where I'm talking about the concept plant, the pilot plant, the demonstration plant, which can take as much as hundreds of millions of dollars to get into, before you get to a commercial angle. Now, on the top side of the chart there, I've separated out, there's the government funding, and then there's the public-private partnerships, and then on the extreme right-hand side, we're talking about the private funding. So that gives you a perspective that the government does need to be involved, because as I said earlier, this is usually for the public benefit. The government does need to be involved if they're looking at long-term technology development initiatives and programs. Here in New York State, we spend a substantial amount of money. Between California and New York, we spend a huge amount of money on everything from the Renewable Portfolio Standard to Systems Benefit Charge to the EAPS program as well. And that, if applied correctly, can produce the kind of results that we're actually looking at. I got a lot more to talk about, of course, but I wanted to keep my discussion to a minimum right now. I mean, what I'm trying to say is we have a model that has worked, and we continue to grow it. If you were there at our place about 2 years ago or even a year ago, you'll see the big change and the big differences in the growth that we've actually had. And I welcome all of you to come and visit us. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I learned a lot. That's a phenomenal facility you've got there.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk a little bit about TechBridge today, Fraunhofer TechBridge. And in the United States, as everyone's probably gathered that Fraunhofer is a German company. Most times, if you know what Fraunhofer does already, you're way ahead of most people. So generally speaking, I'll give a slide or two in the beginning just to explain what it is we do, such that what we're doing at TechBridge makes some sense. So just to start things off, Fraunhofer is a large nonprofit organization. It's a global leader in technology commercialization. And it's all, I mean, the key word here is applied research. It's, when I first got into the business, a friend of mine once told me, basic research is taking money and making knowledge. Applied research is taking knowledge and making money. And in order for a corporation to make any money out of any technology, this valley of death, as Pradeep was calling it, has to be crossed. Somebody actually has to put the effort and time in to do that applied research. It's a very unprofitable endeavor, and that's why this is a state-funded activity, partially state-funded activity in Germany. But on the other hand, you can never, if you want applied research to ever happen, you can never fully fund your scientists, otherwise they'll do basic research because the scientists will like to fund science as opposed to the more Edison kind of rolling filament-like science that is required for any product commercialization. So that's what we're all about. We're about economic development through technology commercialization. We have 80-plus research units worldwide, over $2 billion in annual research, 18,000 employees, a lot of which are PhDs. And we work primarily for industry. We do a lot of competitive government contracts, but a lot of industry research work. And almost all Fraunhofer institutes are co-located with a university, a partner institute. And the idea is to leverage that research network as well. And there's a strong collaboration back and forth from Fraunhofer and its partner university. Just to put everything into context, again, the theme of economic development, this is something that we funded. It fits too in the Marshall Plan. And the idea was rebuild Germany through collaborative research. It worked really well. So it was recognized as an important contributor of the German economic miracle. And today, Germany stands in a situation, even today in these financial times, 6.3% unemployment rates. That's their lowest in 20 years. The only economic problem they've really got is they keep bailing out the Greeks and the Irish. But beyond that, they're doing pretty well. And so it begs the question, okay, so what have they done right? And that's what got me interested in Fraunhofer originally. In 1993, Fraunhofer opened their first labs here. And I came into the picture a little bit after that. But the idea of Fraunhofer USA, now remember, Fraunhofer is a German organization, 30% funded by the German taxpayer. So we created a separate nonprofit, Fraunhofer USA, right, because you don't want to be spending too much for German taxpayer money in the United States. No, they wouldn't go for that. So the Fraunhofer USA is a USA model for the direct benefit of the US economy that will get other funding sources. But the idea was to replicate what worked so well in Germany over here. And over the last 16 years, there are now, we have 8 now, but there's only 7 on here. But there's 8 laboratories, including mine, the Center for Sustainable Energy Systems in Boston, Massachusetts. We have manufacturing innovation, also in Boston, coatings and laser applications, laser technology, molecular biotechnology, experimental software engineering, and digital media technology. So, did I mention a 501c3 nonprofit? So yeah, one of the ideas, of course, is while we are a separate legal entity, we want to create strong bonds with the researchers over in Germany. And we've adopted the model. We implement exactly the same model over here. And by doing that, ideally, so for example, when I started the Sustainable Energy Systems group, I looked over to Germany. I have a sponsor over there, and we started picking up some of the capabilities and applications and expertise, and that basically seeded all our groups with that. So the idea is to leverage off of that talent and that model to really jumpstart things over for the US model. So the Fraunhofer Center for Sustainable Energy Systems, we have 3 major research focuses: PV module innovation, building energy efficiency, and distributed energy systems. And I was smiling when I saw Pradeep's slide because what he's looking at and what I'm looking at are very similar topics. And then underneath that all, we have TechBridge. And the reason I gave you this long introduction was in order to understand how TechBridge works and why we think it can be very strong, you have to understand that it reaches across the entire Fraunhofer network, not only in the United States, but also in Germany. And it actually brings, Jeff McCauley is my program manager for TechBridge. He calls it an on-ramp for new technologies and new startups. And that's what he put on the slide, an on-ramp. But in all seriousness, though, why do we work? Well, so what do we do? TechBridge is a platform more than anything else. It's a platform to move a concept, a technology from the concept stage to the market stage to actually work. And that's what startups are, and that's what startups do. And that's where the VCs come in and they fund the company and all that stuff. So generally speaking, that, and we heard twice already, the venture capital model works great in IT. IT is a very noble system. It's a man-made system. You can, less capital investment. It's changing over time, but there's less of these capital, these 800-pound gorillas trying to focus policy in one direction against you. And biotech is a little more challenging, but it's less multidisciplinary than solving an energy problem. When you're going after energy, you're taking on the biggest technical challenges there are. They're very multidisciplinary. They're extremely political. So this is like one of the toughest nuts to crack and one of the hardest spaces to get in if you're going to be a startup company. So the question is, does VC have to evolve to play in this space? How do you fund these companies? How do little guys take off with new ideas, and how do new ideas get into the mainstream of what we're doing in the United States? The way we looked at it was, what if we can use the Fraunhofer, use TechBridge as a platform to reduce the investment risk in pre-commercial technologies, and by virtue of the fact we have this massive lab system that has not only the ability to provide market coaching and all that stuff. Well, we're primarily technologists. We can look at not only validating things, talking about how it works, we can also develop it with the technologist. And TechBridge was founded to have really three main areas of expertise. Be able to provide technology development for the startup. Connect all the necessary pieces from the global lab system together to answer a question that is being asked of us. So if it's all about validating a certain technology and showing that with data that it works, do that. Or if someone asks us, okay, well, on our roadmap, we have to be able to do X, Y, and Z, we will try to figure out how to do that. And TechBridge works, I think, because we have that depth of experience across the whole network where we can call upon some of these scientists who have been doing this for 25 years, who can give us some very good information and do some really good work for us. The second part of the concept, though, is voice of the customer. Voice of the customer is critical in a startup, period, but especially in what we're doing today in clean tech. If you invent some new widget for the utilities and they don't want to use it, well, you wasted your time. So you need the voice of that customer, absolutely. And that's one thing that we try to leverage. Fraunhofer traditionally has worked for very large companies, not startups. The virtue of that for TechBridge is that we now have a huge client base of very large companies that we know what they want. And finally, capital efficiency. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road on the VC model that we were talking about. It costs, as Pradeep was saying, hundreds, billions of dollars to actually roll these things out in a linear fashion to go forward. So if you make the wrong bets early on, you're going to lose a lot of money. Not just hundreds of millions, but billions. It's going to go badly for you. So there must be a new process that we use, a new way to manage. So the venture capital model today works in a fashion where someone raises the $1 billion fund, they have 20 guys to deploy $1 billion, and they're going to take 20 bets or 30 bets because it's hard to manage more than that because there are bandwidth constraints, realistically. Well, the energy problem doesn't call for less bets and or less ideas and bigger bets. It's calling for more ideas and smaller bets, and a funneling of all this towards the results that will actually work. So Fraunhofer is set up to promote that capital efficiency by allowing investors to help manage these smaller projects while they're in the incubation phase. Well, when it's a $50,000 project and a VC can look into a portfolio and say, oh, well, my TechBridge, they can think of TechBridge as one thing and look at all the little sub-projects that are being managed for them and start picking out things that they like from that portfolio. TechBridge has a couple core services, and I brought Jeff specifically so he can tell you all about these later on. But roughly, basically the high level, validation and benchmarking, prototype development and system integration, next generation technology development, and application development for platform technologies. And we have a process, like I said, this is a platform. It's so what do we do? Well, first we search. We work with investors and strategic partners we look for a specific problem we're trying to solve, a particular technology area. Then TechBridge will marshal the Fraunhofer resources and the resources of our partner universities and partner labs around these proposal areas. And then we will go out and we will award these small TechBridge grants to winning startup ideas. We have a call for proposal. And we get, I don't know how many people applied last time, but it was a lot. And then Jeff and his team will pick out the technologies that seem to make sense and that we think we can help. And we'll start to work on those. And so when they're doing the process, when they're working out, they're developing their scope of work, the milestones, a grant is awarded to the most suitable companies, and then ultimately you launch, you execute the projects, and you're able to report to your investors, to your corporate, to your clients, whoever actually has the financial interest in the game. They're getting information about what's working and what's not at not such an expensive price. And if you think about how corporate venture capital, corporate venturing works in the United States, many large companies will spend $5 million, $10 million a year just to have a staff that goes out and looks around so they have corporate information about what works and what doesn't work. They can see what's coming at them. So this is a way that you could actually improve on that process. And by getting, you get real data about, instead of speculating what might happen by having some guys look at the outside field, you actually could do some work and get some reports on what actually is happening. So just to illustrate, and I'm going to make it quick so we can have a discussion, just to illustrate how this might work in practice. We have a current project. It's a ubiquitous energy out of the Baldo lab or Abulovich's lab in MIT. And basically it's thin film solar on paper, which sounds really interesting. We are doing a number of projects for them, but basically it's a validation of the application and the specific performances thereof. Now, how do we go about doing something like this? It is pretty multidisciplinary, and we don't have the CNSE, the Fraunhofer Center at MIT, only has a few pieces of the puzzle to make this project work. So what do we do next? Well, TechBridge they're the project managers, they're quarterbacking this whole project. So TechBridge will link the PV technology assets in the entire Fraunhofer system for this particular project. And it's in order to validate it and develop it. And really the concept is harnessing the expertise and the capabilities of these laboratories. So I'll just tell you what, in this particular project, what a guy like Jeff would be linking together. So there's us at MIT. We're primarily, we've got this PV modules group. We've got some real capabilities there. And we're able to do a lot of the, we've been looking at how to build better modules for 3 or 4 years now. And we have some great scientists who can model out and build better prototypes, test them out. We have a lot of expertise in durability testing, performance and material characterization, module fabrication. But that's only one component, because you got a successful startup's going to need to know a little bit more than just how to build a module. So we have a group that does photovoltaic silicon cells. Now, in this particular case, they may or may not come into play. We don't know. But this is the largest in the world, 930 researchers. They're the world record holders in cell efficiency, module efficiency, and inverter efficiency. And I'll have to double check on the cell efficiency because it keeps going back and forth between Fraunhofer and Spire. I think Spire was the last winner thereof, but I think we just announced that we got it back again, but I don't know that. But we also have an institute for electron beam and plasma technology. And these guys are experts in thin film cells. They've been doing this for quite a while. They have 130 researchers. They're into thin film cells, thin film modules. They have a project out there called Solar Factory 2020 to make extremely low-cost solar modules by that period of time. So obviously, these are guys that we'll be working with. We also have the Fraunhofer EVES and ISE. These guys are into the power systems and power system modeling and grid interconnect. So there's a picture of the world record inverter. That's the one at Fraunhofer ISE. There is the more conversion and electrical machinery and grid equipment over at EVES. Obviously, we're not going to use grid equipment for our Ubiquitous project, but we are bringing EVES in for a couple of. EVES actually is the guy who does the Sunny Boy inverters. So that's one the box that you'll put on your house when you're inverting the electricity off your solar panel array. And then they'll be linking up the outdoor PV module testing. That's one of our groups. We have a group that's out. We have labs out in Revere, Massachusetts, and Albuquerque, New Mexico, where we can actually take these demonstration modules, whatever type, we're technology agnostic, put them outside and see how they work. And the entire Fraunhofer system is involved in the PV Module Durability Initiative, which is an initiative we have where we're ranking the quality of photovoltaic modules. Today, just to summarize, today it's more of a pass-fail system. You get certified or you don't. And it penalizes people who make really good panels because their panels are a little more expensive, despite the fact they'll probably last a lot longer and perform a lot better. So our job is to basically look at all the panels and really be able to qualify them in terms of gradations. How well do they work? And finally, and I know there's a lot of slides here, so I'm done almost. Finally, we have the certification facility out in New Mexico called CFV. We were actually a co-founder, so we're only partial. I mean, we're involved in it. We're only one of the entities involved, one of 4 entities involved, including Fraunhofer ISE, which is our partner in Germany, and CSA, which is the UL of Canada, and VDE, which is kind of the UL of Germany. And these guys, this is the test of the pass-fail test that allows new modules to be sold into the marketplace. So just to step back, the concepts here are, when we're working for Ubiquitous, we have a couple projects we're putting together for them. We're able to link up all those laboratories. Jeff quarterbacks the project, or one of the technicals, the PV technical leads, and we drive it to hopefully a quick conclusion at lower cost than you normally would need to pay, because we have a standing lab with all the experts already doing the stuff that need to be done. And we have an upcoming innovation challenge. Like I said, we'll focus on one thing. And right now, we're putting together something around grid technology. We're calling it the utility challenge. And one thing that we see is that utilities, if you think about smart grid startup, smart grid technologies, innovations in the space, utilities have to be involved. If they're not involved, it's not going to happen, like I alluded to before. So we've been working with we have a lot of partners who happen to be utilities. We've been working with the utilities to understand what do they need to see. What are, not only just the general concepts of what should be developed in the space, but metric-wise, what are the numbers that we have to hit? What are the very, very specific types of challenges that they're seeing? That's what we're putting together for our part, this innovation challenge. And we're going to make this publicly available to everyone, and the entire entrepreneurial space, and we're going to get this. We're also going to have another proposal thing for TechBridge. And so this model works. I'm proud to say we had our most recent success story was First Fuel. It's a building energy analytics company. We did a project for them. I think we awarded it in November. They were funded last month with $2.4 million from Battery and Net Power, and this was a perfect example of how you find a company that needs a little bit of validation and development work. You do that work for them. You show the data to the investors, and the investors say, "Hey, it seems to make sense now." So we never advocate for a position nor a technology. That's not our job. We just give out the data and let the investors decide. We can even analyze the data to a certain extent and tell them what the data means. But the ultimate investment idea, the ultimate decisions come down to the money people. And we have a current smart grid project. Even in advance of our big call, we're working on Cato Energy, and I know I'm going long, so I'm going to let Jeff talk to you about that after the presentation, if you're interested. This is kind of my summary slide. Just to remind you, TechBridge is an open innovation platform for tech commercialization. It's about going from the lab to the market and helping the entrepreneurs get there. We're focused massively on market pull and voice of customer. We leverage the existing lab. That's really our secret sauce for TechBridge to make it work. We have a huge lab network between our partners, our university partners, as well as our other partners, and obviously the Fraunhofer Laboratory Network. And and this whole thing runs with a minimum government intervention. There is some DOE money in it, but there's a lot of private money that flows into these projects in order to launch them up. So we're hoping that this can serve as a tool for the investment community and for entrepreneurs alike so the entrepreneurs can get their good ideas funded, and so we can help get these things to market as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
We've just heard really, really interesting descriptions of two fantastic organizations, really kind of world-class in what they do and the resources they bring to bear on the problems they help companies and other institutions solve. It's interesting to note they're both, academic or affiliated with academic institutions, very strong research credibility. They're both nonprofit. And they function, obviously, as kind of major hubs, bring together small companies, big companies, government resources, the resources of their own and other academic institutions. And they provide a really broad range of support to their constituents. So really, really sort of amazing organizations. And we heard each of them say a lot about the clean tech space. And really, I have a whole bunch of questions that I'd love to ask, but I'm conscious of the fact that we have 15 minutes, and maybe we can create a little more time for your questions. And so rather than sort of guide the discussion at this point in any given direction, I just want to open it up to see what's on your mind. Yeah.
So I would ask each of the speakers your wish list. If we in the audience or the government or somebody could do 3-4 things, what would be most helpful to you? I can make up things, but I'm very curious. What would be next steps to advance? If the government changed X, if private investors did Y, what would be your wish list?
I think the most important thing that needs to happen in the clean tech space is the private investors getting together with the government and co-investing together on projects that make a lot of sense. I'm not talking about just project finance. I'm talking about investment, everything from seed capital to going past the valley of death to much bigger initiatives for pilot scale manufacturing, for example. No one person can do it by themselves, and it's all about spreading risk. And so if the private and the public investments went in together, that would work really well. In some recent discussions that we've had with the Department of Energy, the federal government, for example, they are trying to implement a lot of changes, but they are completely frustrated with the yo-yo effect in terms of the political aspects of what's actually going on in Washington. So they're saying, we need the regional, we need a ground-up support level from the standpoint of everything from the financial organizations to the political support to the technology guys trying to develop and create the ecosystem, if you will. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I would strongly agree with the private-public capital partnerships. I think that's really, and that's kind of what we're talking about, is like, how do you bring and guide them? But you asked me a really big question, so I'll throw a couple other things out there. And Pradeep alluded to policy. I see too often in Washington, I see technology solutions substituting for what really should be policy solutions and practical policy. And we see a lot of implementation problems in a number of the sustainable energy fields because the policies are kind of are set up the wrong way. And there's not an awful lot of, there's a lot of talk about fixing them, but it's hard to do. That's another thing. And there was a third thing I thought about, but I'll hold it for later.
Yeah.
And the question was to Pradeep, as he mentioned, firewalls, intellectual property firewalls, which allow the company to enjoy overall great shared resources and still keep their core IP to themselves. And one big problem which I found when I'm working with the universities is the desire of the universities to basically grab everything developed in the university property. So could you please elaborate on how those firewalls work?
Good question.
Did everyone hear the question?
Okay, you want to repeat
Yeah,
it?
you-
Yeah, okay. I'll repeat the question. That's a very good question, and I alluded to in my talk that we keep firewalls between companies that are developing technologies, and we protect their background IP and any foreground IP that gets created during the process. We have a robust system of, number one, agreements, for example, that we start off with, and we have a pretty robust way of making sure that there is no cross-contamination between individuals that are working on specific projects between companies. That's one example. Another thing that we do also is we create private space for companies that they can come in and use some of these facilities on their own if they'd like to, or rent the space on their own. And the key difference is, you're absolutely right, most universities will say, hey, if we co-develop, if you're doing a joint development agreement with you, we need to own it, or we need to jointly own it at the very least. We don't have that restriction. We have created an infrastructure that can be, that can privately be used by anybody that wants to use them as well. So there's a variety of different mechanisms. I mean, if you want to do a consortium type program where you have multiple companies that come together, whether it's across a vertical chain or across a horizontal supply chain in a specific industry, they can do that as well. So we have all of the forms and the factors to make that actually happen. And it's been very effective. We've been doing it for 10 years. We have all the big companies, the companies that wouldn't want to talk to any university to work with them because of the problem that you just identified. We don't have any problems with them. They work very closely with us.
I might just put a similar question to Noel, or give you a chance to comment on this if you'd like, and then I have a little twist. I think this is a very interesting topic, and I have a little twist on it that I'd like to lob at you as well.
Okay. So how we handle
Yeah.
it? In Fraunhofer, the institute director handles the IP, so decides what they're going to do. There's no fixed policy. We don't have to. So the way I look at it, if you're asking how I look at IP, I look at it, you own what you bring to the table. So I'm not looking to take anyone's IP from them. It's my job to make sure that if I have a team of scientists working on something and they invent something, that we get what is, I think it's IRS rules actually, that we get duly compensated for what's created. But when it comes to TechBridge, for example, because I know that startups are always concerned about the IP, since each institute director has the ability to waive the rights to the IP, we'll waive the rights. We'll collectively put together a group of people who will be able to do that. So it's handled on a case-by-case basis depending on what we bring to the project. And I'll tell you the thing about Fraunhofer that I've learned over the last couple of years, the primary reason that these guys want to have IP is so they can sell more contract research services as opposed to do anything else. They don't want to be barred from their area of research. It's certainly a non-competitive thing. So ultimately, a lot of the projects where we do create IP, where it is jointly owned, in fact, I think all the cases we give exclusive license to the startup or the company we're working with.
So just quickly, a little twist. In hearkening back to the first question, I would have added to the list of what kind of changes might be interesting or help the space. Potentially would be some forward thinking around IP strategies in the tech space. We see the open source model. We see standards bodies coming together and so forth. And I'm just curious what you guys think and anyone really about the need for this sort of thing in the clean tech space. Obviously, very much at tension with the idea of getting rich from your efforts in or investments in the context of a startup at times. But do people see any kind of interesting partnering, IP sharing relationships that are helping accelerate innovation?
Well, I mean, I've seen Rick Scranshaw at Arizona State University, and the gentleman who just joined as the IP director at New South Wales in Australia. They're publicly going out there as the IP guardians of their universities, saying that their policy is let's give away the IP. That's what I've personally feel too, in the sense that when you're in a position where you have already got the leading researchers in a group who have kicked out the IP, the most important thing is actually to get it into circulation so a company starts using it, because that company is going to call you up and say, hey, will you do a research contract for me? Well, guess what? I'm in the contract research business. That's exactly what I want to see happen.
Right. Interesting how your organizations are sort of organized in a way that allows you to be more liberal in that regard. Yeah.
And flexible.
And flexible. How about gentleman in the back on the left here? Yep.
My question is, without a price for carbon, how do you level the playing field between fossil fuel economics and bodies in that area with clean tech space?
I'm sure we have some views on that question. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, how long do we have?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is obviously personal opinion now. I mean, we're getting into a question which is not necessarily, I don't think, supported by any specific. But the point I will make here is, and I'm a firm believer in the fact that I don't think clean tech needs to compete with any of the fossil fuels. Let's face it. In the next 30 or so years, we're going to need more fossil fuels. We're going to need more oil. We're going to need more natural gas. We're going to need more coal. We're going to need a lot more of the clean tech stuff as well. I'm not talking about primarily in the U.S. You look at some of the developing countries and the needs that they have to get to the same level as a westernized or a fully developed world, you'll get the picture. I mean, we need at least 3 times more power or energy than we consume today about 20 or 30 years from now. So it's a big pie, in my view. The pizza pie is huge, and it's getting bigger, a lot bigger. And we're just touching the surface with clean tech. So as long as we can continue to make technology innovations and find the right applications for the technology, there will be a huge market for it. That's my personal sense.
So I agree with what Pradeep's saying. I think that we're going to need an awful lot of energy, and right now, just where we stand with sustainable energy, it's just a fraction of everything. So there's a lot of room to grow. That having been said, I will go out to say it's really important, because like I was saying about policy before, it's really important that we understand what we're investing in this country. So we should have and I have a colleague at QGen who's funding a big study on this, to understand the true cost of the different fuel energy sources. Because it's very hard to get the right data. It's very hard to understand how do you compare cents per kilowatt hour of something generated by coal versus nukes versus oil versus on and on and on. First off, you have the whole problem between power and fuels to sort out. But even if you were able to figure that out, there is a number of hidden costs that are so deep in the system that what is the true cost of a coal-fired power plant? Forget about environmentalism, by the way. Forget about that part. Let's talk about true costs. Well, there is if we have government paying health care, and forget about the secondary smoke damages and that type of stuff, just the direct health care costs for coal miners, which the government subsidizes. That's a very big number. Okay, so no one's ever really thought about that before. And when you start picking at all these different areas, you start realizing, okay, well, there are massive costs that we are incurring federally. There's real numbers going out of our treasury. What I'd like to see, and what I would advocate for, is a true study, an objective study of all these things, and to the extent that it can be done, Not because I want to see sustainable energy dominate everything else, because that's not the goal here. Like Pradeep said, it's going to be, we're going to need everything. But the question is, when we invest to the future, are we investing on a timeline so that we get to a bigger piece of solar and a bigger piece of wind by 2020, or do we want to be there in 2100? I mean, what is the right timeline? And I think we don't really have a grasp of that right now.
Great. Other questions? Gentleman right here in the middle. Yeah.
This is a specific question for Helen. We talked about lengthy incubation periods for clean tech. For the companies that you've seen succeed in TechBridge, how much incubation was done before they came to you, and what, trying to get a better sense of what stage they came to you at? Like for Ubiquitous, did they come to you with 3 centimeter square papers to help sell and help them scale that up to?
Well, yeah, I would say actually that we've seen different things. So we had one company, our first kind of prototype company came in, and it was off of a technology from NREL, a long-lost NREL technology from a scientist who kind of got relegated to the scrap heap of history, and then came back, and we were able to prove out the technology, and it helped get her company off the ground. And then Ubiquitous is far more early stage out of the lab. But Jeff, do you want to say a few words about that?
Sure, I'd love to talk more after, but the easy wins on the board first are software companies, and you saw First Fuel and Kiddo, both software. But we target things that are just spitting out of the university labs, primarily because there are a lot of university resources, and we try to be positioned at that applied stage when those lab resources are no longer useful for the next step. So that's really the stage of development we look for. We don't link it to a specific TRL, but it's basically, it has to be closer and applied. And as far as time frame going forward, that depends on, we do a chunk at a time. We do for one milestone, one validation, and if we're able to help with a grant application or find additional funding, then it can keep going, but it's very much staged.
Yeah, hi.
Question regarding human capital. We have a limited number of people going into the applied sciences, whether it's U.S. or through overseas coming in. How does that impact your growth, per se, in the company if you're not for profit status? I would imagine a fair number of people will go out to the private sector and earn money. Is that impacting your ability to, are you trained, I guess, effectively on what you're trying to accomplish?
I can talk about ourselves. I mean, I sort of mentioned briefly also that we've grown from, in the last 8 to 10 years, we've grown from like 50 people to close to 3,000 people within our center, being a not-for-profit. And we've not really had, I mean, in the early years, we did have some issues in terms of attracting the human capital, but not much right now. I mean, as long as you are competitive and you provide a sort of an environment that is fun for these guys in terms of what they're actually doing, and I mean, you attract the best. 20 minutes from us is Global Foundries' major manufacturing program or factory that they're putting in place. They're hiring over the last 2.5 to 3 years. Their goal is to hire close to about 1,800 people, and we're talking about high-level scientists as well as techs and engineers and things like that. And they've not had much of a problem either in terms of attracting some of the best minds from around the country and around the world too. So it's not been an issue for us as far as I can tell.
So Fraunhofer is actually set up to do the training. That's one of the parts of our mission, is to educate the next generation workforce. So there is a steady flow of new people in and graduated people out. It's not exactly a university, but that's one of the reasons we're so plugged into the university system. It came from the traditional, well, like I said, it was established in Germany. In Germany, if you're getting your master's degree, you have to do 6 months of practical training. That's with a company. And Fraunhofer, for engineers, tends to be the place where you want to go. So we draw a tremendous number of those 6-month practical training guys. So we'll have these rotations every 6 months, train somebody up on a project, and they go out the door again. It's it's good in the sense that when someone's around for 6 months to a year, you can actually get valuable work out of them, and at the same time, they're learning a lot. And we don't just do that here, or rather, it wasn't just Germany. We do it here as well. We have an intern program, and actually on Friday we signed a licensing agreement on a new PV metrology patent that we filed last year. It was a big win for us. It was developed, the original ideas and very basic, the earlier science work was developed in-house by some of the PV team, some of the PhDs there. A lot of the basic development, a lot of the development work over time, improving it out, was done by a guy named John Lloyd, who came to us from Rensselaer. And he basically worked for us for 9 months while he was applying to different PhD programs. And we basically got a good project out of it. We licensed it. We got some nice work. And he's a PhD in Harry Atwater's group over at Caltech now. So when it all comes together, that's how it wins. So we're hoping actually a lot of people leave our place, or at least the right ones, like the young people that we're training.
I will add that the human capital problem we have, at least on the education side, is I can't get my students to finish their PhDs because a few months before finishing their PhDs, they get such great jobs that they just leave.
Yeah.
I mean, they get paid 5 times, 6 times more within our complex with all the partners we have. I mean, in terms of because of the training they've been through, in terms of, the real industry type setting. That's a bigger problem for me than it is to attract people to our place.
I might just quickly drop a footnote on this one, which is in focusing on kind of the non-technical personnel. One of the things that I hear investors moan about, I guess, if I can use that word, is how difficult it can be to find the business talent to help scale these companies, because people are, these companies are doing very new things. There are lots of, successful executives and entrepreneurs in the clean tech and biotech spaces at this point, even though it can be hard to find senior talent in those spaces. Less so in clean tech, and I know that there are a number of programs around the country to try to address this. We have one in the Boston area, sponsored by the New England Clean Energy Council originally, which tries to help executives transition into the clean tech space, give them a crash course. But this issue of human talent in the space, I think, is a very real and pressing one. I think we have time for just one more question. How about right here?
Quick question. What is your relationship with the largest companies in the country? Do you act as liaison or broker? Your clients with the IBM, Samsung, DuPont, et cetera. What is your relationship with the biggest players?
Well, we have several roles and responsibilities with them. So one of them is pretty straightforward and simple. I mean, we co-develop technology with them, and they come and use our infrastructure, and so we have agreements with them to do that. A more important relationship, I would add, is that of what we consider, and we use this term all the time, building the ecosystem in the technology world that we live in. And what I mean by that is, on one side, if you're starting to help startup companies to get to a certain level where they can start to get investments in them, I think, in my view, as a startup company, the best investment they can get, especially in the space that we're in, which requires tremendous amount of infrastructure, is strategic investment as opposed to VC-type investment. Because the strategic investment that comes from a fairly large company, like an IBM or like a GE or an AMD or something like that, these guys will monitor and sort of evaluate your technology over a period of time. And then they, as a large company, will eventually acquire the smaller company, which is a much faster way to accelerate technology rather than the small company try to build their own business model and try to build the infrastructure and move it along and move it forward. So these companies are there scouting around a lot. I mean, and it's not just the IBMs. You talk about the top 100 companies that are there in Fortune 100 companies, and they're always around, snooping around, doing technology development with us, as well as talking to a lot of the startup companies that are developing technology at our place. So we look at it as a symbiotic relationship where, you know, each one is helping the other.
Great. Well, I'll just say thank you very much, and I think, Mary, you have a word or two you want to say as well. Really appreciate Noel's and Pradeep's presence here tonight.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And one of the big functions of the MIT Enterprise Forum is the opportunity to also network. So we invite you to get a beverage, grab some food, introduce yourself to some of the speakers and the moderator, and meet each other. There are a lot of very, very interesting people here tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next month.